Good afternoon. As you well know, I'm George Sanders, and I'm here today to bring you up to date with some information for some upcoming action that's going to be required of voters at the November town meeting. And I'm also here to bring you up to date with regards to other information that I've given you with regards to the Senior Center and the Indian Hill Music Building there at it's on King Street, 36 and 32 properties that the town purchased at the last town meeting. Well, first of all, it's good news in the sense that your taxes will not be going up to renovate the Indian Hill building, which they're scheduled to put the school administration offices in there and also Park and Rec. So it's going to come out of the in-levy monies of the budget. So that way they're not going to ask you for any additional money through a debt exclusion to go out and renovate that. Number two, as you well know, if you did know, the Senior Center costs sort of kind of escalated with regards to inflation. And it started out, I guess, originally they were thinking about the same cost at the library, which was 14 point some, almost 15 million. Well, it went higher, 15, 16, 17, 18 and a half. So the last time they gave an update to the select board, I believe it was at 18.3, but they still was working on hoping that they were going to be able to get it down a little bit lower. However, as you well know, the tennis courts here at Shattuck Street is the location that the Senior Center is going to be built on. So we're going to have to replace the tennis court. And I believe they're thinking about doing that up around the high school there, where the tennis courts and where the buses are parked at over there. And we had that vacant spot, which is a 32 King Street lot that was purchased with the Indian Hill Music Center there. Therefore, you can count anywhere between $750,000 to $1 million they're probably going to take to do that. So anyway, you're looking at another debt that's going to be added on, but it's going to be within levy, so they're going to pay for it without asking you for any additional money. So that's the good news on that. As you well know, if you did know, Shaker Lane is in the background, and they're working on the preliminary stage of building another elementary school. It's a twofold concept. One is that there isn't too many projects that you can start that the state will give you money for. The schools are one of them, and the library is the other one. So we're fortunate that we're looking at approximately, maybe, give or take, depends on what the state give us, you're looking at least 50% of the cost of that elementary school is going to be paid by taxpayers. And that is a project that the town is going to ask you as taxpayers to go outside of the levy and fund it, which means that there would be a debt exclusion I just threw out a number, say 30 years. And once the 30 years in, then that would drop off your taxes. It's unfortunate that today inflation is, last time I heard it was 3%. It went up to around 10, 11%, which is the fact that most projects today have taken in consideration and been riding the coattail of inflation to up the ante on the prices that they're charging for projects. And that's the way the world is out there, and that's the way business is, that they take the advantage. And of course, all the contractors, for the most part, they think that municipalities is just loaded with money, and the state is just loaded with money, and that's not true. And this is why we're having a lot of projects now that with the cost is really up there. And say a year and a half ago, you could see a difference between 15 to 20% difference in the cost to build a project. Well, in addition to the updates on that, I'm here also to come to you as voters and taxpayers in the town of Littleton, and to let you know that the Community Preservation Committee is going to be asking taxpayers for funding to increase the Community Preservation Act, the CPA, which is added to your tax bill. The only difference between the CPA and an override is the fact that the first $100,000 is deducted from the assessment of your property. If your property is assessed at $700,000, then they tax you on $600,000 for the CPA, which is 1%. That is currently 1%. And I was also against them coming before and asking for you as taxpayers to raise this by 2% to make it 3%, so they could go to the state and get this percentage that the state is giving back on return, which is if you have 3% of monies that you put into the program, then the state will give you a little bit of an incentive, which is, I guess you can get, it was 30, but I guess if you go to 3%, they'll give you somewhere around like about 39% return on the money, which is good return. I mean, you can't beat the return on the money as far as that go. But I have a concern about the town coming and sticking their hands in your pocket, as I said before, and asking you for the 2%. So I've been working very hard over the last few months, working with the select board, and primary select person there is Mr. Mark Rambacher. I've been working with him and trying to come to a compromise with regards to what we can do in easing the burden on the taxpayers' pockets. So we came up with the fact that, and also the CPC, which is the Community Preservation Committee, agreed not to ask you for 2%, but ask you for 1% more to put into the Community Preservation Act, which would bring it up to a total of 2%. I was kind of reluctant agreed to the fact that, yeah, I think that it is a good cause, and yes, I think that we can help the CPA, the CPC, which is the Community Preservation Committee, to meet some of their primary objectives that they have in terms of raising more money to put into the program to get a better return on the money to be used on various projects. I think accountability is very important for the town to know exactly what is this money being spent on. There's a very limited number of items that they use the money for. Based upon that, I somewhat agreed. I sent a letter to the select board, to the finance, FinCom, and to the chief assessor of the town of Littleton about my thoughts as to the 1%, and what I wanted to do was to tie that 1% in and said, that's it, don't come back and ask us for no more money. Well, at a town meeting, you can't do that, I come to find out. You cannot restrict a town meeting. So the select board could come back and readdress this. They could come back in and say, we want to increase it by 1% more and move it up to 3%. Well, you have the right as voters to amend it on the town floor at the town meeting and say, we want to decrease it from the 2% now down to 0.5%. And if the amendment goes through and it passes, then the CPA becomes 0.5%. So you have the leverage at the town meeting to amend it, even though they may come back and want to ask for more. But the understanding that I had from Mr. Rambacher is that we hope that we won't be coming back asking you, the taxpayer, for any more money once you give us this additional 1% to bring the CPA up to 2%. What I suggested to the town was that there were certain things that the town have local aid on, and I suggested that perhaps maybe we could increase it by 0.5% on the taxes, and Mr. Rumbacher informed me that we are maxed out on the amount of money that these items, which was the hotel tax, the canvas tax, and also the meals tax. He informed me that we are getting the maximum that is allowable by the state law. So therefore, that sort of kind of shoots that in the foot. Now, what they need to do is to establish, which I suggested to them, to establish a stabilization fund for the CPA. And from time to time, they could put money in there, and that will give the CPC, which is the Community Preservation Committee, the opportunity to draw down funding that they may need from that stabilization fund. So, Mr. Rambacher suggested that the town come up with the 1%. They sort of kind of took a poll among the select board, and these are the members that Kern Morrison, Matt Newhouse, and Mr. Mark Rambacher. They agreed to put an article on the warrant to increase it by 1%. However, the chair of the select board reserved his support because he would like to see if the town officials can come up with the 2% that is needed to make it 3% before an article is put on the warrant of a 1% increase, and see if the town can come up with the 2%. Well, I sort of kind of told the select board that I thought that trying to come up with the 2% funding for monies that the town already have would be a break of the bank. I think it would bust the reserve for what they have. The last time I believe that I was told that they had roughly about $2 million to include stabilization and free cash that they had, and et cetera. Well, all the money that the town has in hand that's in the reserve, which means that it is sitting there or it's in a bank or whatever the case is, let me tell you, that money is excess taxes that the town has collected from taxpayers. There's no free cash. They use the term free cash that Department of Revenue will certify. Maybe it's $500,000 that they certified for Littleton. They call it free cash. For instance, if it is $500,000 that was certified, that is not free cash. That is your excess tax money that the town collected that they did not use or not committed to spending. So I look at it as surplus money that they collected from us that they're holding on to. So it is my hope, and I told the select board and FinCom that I believe that they could come up with 1% more for monies that the town has on hand. And with you voting 1% increase to 2% at the November town meeting, then that would give the town the 3%. And if the town saw fit that they wanted to put more in there than the 3% of the correction, if the town saw fit that they wanted to put more than the 1% to make it 3%, then that's on the town. I don't look for them to come back and ask. So my pledge to you here today is that if we pass the 2%, the message that we're sending to the town, don't come back and ask us for another 1% or any other amount, because if you do, we're going to kill it. You need to find the rest of the money that you need to make it 3% within the town budget. Don't come back and ask us anymore, because typically that is a typical ride of an override on your property tax. And the only difference between it is that they eliminate the first $100,000 assessment on your property. That's the only difference between the override and going out and doing an override to Prop 2.5. So don't come back. We pass. I'm encouraging you to pass the 1% to make it 2%, and we're saying don't come back and ask us for any more money for this CPA. You find the money and make me set up your financial policies, that different elements within the town that you can put money into a stabilization for the CPA. That's what they should do. That's what should have been in place. There are a lot of things financial-wise that should be in place that's not in place in the town of Littleton when you start talking about the money. And I'm saying, listen, don't keep reaching your hand in the taxpayers' pockets, asking them to give you more money for this item. This CPA has become a sore thumb for me because I think that the intent when it was put in, only 600 people voted it into law. There was an override of 600 people. And it's a means that the easy way they can keep coming in and asking you, saying, well, we need to do this, we need to do that. Well, you need to manage your resources a lot better and stop coming to us because it's override. Now, it's less the first 100,000 assessment. So you pay 2.5 on the budget. The overall budget is up by 2.5%. Well, the CPA does not get hit with the 2.5, but you're paying the 1%, where the equivalent's down to 0.75% added to the 2.5, and let's call it 3.25. And let's add this 1% we're going to add, say in November, let's say it equivalent down to 3/4. Then it becomes 4% that you're paying in Littleton as taxes. That's my theory as to how the number. You cannot ignore the fact that if they're deducting 100%, I mean, $100,000 assessment of your property, now you're paying 1%, now you go to 2%. You still got to add that 2% into that 2.5. Whatever the number come out to be, it's more than 2.5% that you're paying to Littleton taxes on. So you're paying it on the property, less the first 100,000. So I call it the easy way for override on Prop 2.5. You put this mechanism in place to do that. And you as taxpayers and voters need to understand what is going on in the town of Littleton when it comes to your taxes. They do not have a free hand to stick their hand into your pockets and ask for more money for this and for that. Different people have different ideas of wanting to do this and wanting to do that. The town itself needs to get its finance policies in place and put stabilization funding in place for such key items that the town deemed that is necessary. You do not know, for instance, here I have from Department of Revenue on the meal taxes for the first quarter. That was from January 23 to March 31st, 23. The meal tax was $75,908.51. The room occupancy tax was $79,908. $568.60. And the marijuana retail tax was $38,813.92. Urban redevelopment, there was nothing collected there. The total for the first quarter was $194,000, $291.03. From April to June 30, 23, the meal tax was $64,267.83. $64,267.83. The room occupancy tax was $69,738.83. And the marijuana tax was $37,743.82. There was no urban redevelopment. The total was $171,750.48. If you add that together, you get roughly 516. You get roughly 300 and pretty close to $68,000 that they've collected. And let's say if that same amount is collected for the third and the fourth quarter, then you got pretty close to $750,000 local taxes that come into the town. Well, I think for one, that money just goes in the general budget. We don't know what it's being applied to. You know why? Because nobody tells you. Nobody shows you where this money is being applied. You're talking about transparency. There's no transparency here. They don't tell you. You go to the town meeting, sometimes people can't answer the question when it comes up about the budget or what's going on. There's no reason. They should be telling us what is going on. Where's the money being spent? Where's it being used? They don't tell us. And you got to dig and fight to try to find out what is going on. It takes a lot of research on my part to come here and do straight talk to you. I do my very best to try to get the answers to the questions that I have and things that I want to bring up and tell you as a voter, as a taxpayer, and as a resident of the town of Lilt. I put in a request the other day to find out exactly how much money the town has in the reserve. It's sort of kind of a complicated situation, so they said that they would get back to me. But I didn't get the information in time to tell you here. But I think it's important that you know how much money that the town has that is in reserve. And when I say reserve, that means money that they are caring for there, that is sitting there where they got it in some bank drawing interest or whatever the case may be. It is sitting there, and of course, any town or city always has to have some money in reserve for the unknowns that will happen during the course of a year. I don't have a problem with them having money in the reserve, but I think at the same token, what is the amount that they should be holding in reserve? And if there's other things that they're coming up like the CPA, if it's $2 million, why can't they use $500,000 of it and put it in there for the 1% that they need? 2% would be, they're saying roughly it's pretty close around $1 million. I think they collect before $70,000 or $80,000 with the 1% or whatever the case is. But at any token, I think they need to put a permanent fix in place that this is where you're going to get this money, and this is how it's going to be used. We cannot afford, and primarily I'm talking about our seniors, I'm talking about people that own fixed incomes, I'm talking about people that has retired and in some cases they only got one income. And every time the town says we need to reach our hand in your pocket, that means something is going to go less that you depend upon or need. And we just cannot afford to let the town continue to put their hand in our pocket at will and take money and at the same time have a big reserve on hand. That does not sit well with me, because I think they need to do better. And I think down the road, I look at what debts are coming off. I guess the next debt that's coming off is being paid off is in FY25, and it goes on up to FY38. That includes the library and so forth. But there's some that's in 27, one or two there, and there's some in the neighborhood of $30,000 of debt that was in. At one point, we was up around 42 with outside the levy, and inside the levy it was around about 42 million and something. But we have got to keep the eye on the ball. We're required to do certain things. Taxes is one of the things that we're always going to pay. Your taxes, and hear me clearly, your taxes never go down. Your taxes always go up. It always go up by Prop 2.5 every year. There are some communities that has a good heart that they sort of kind of give the taxpayer, instead of taking the 2.5, they end up taking 2%. So they get a 0.5% rollback. When we look at 7, 8 years down the road, hopefully the Lord will lead me here to see this. I look at the amount of monies that the town is going to bring in as new growth and revenue is probably going to be somewhere in the neighborhood, anywhere between $8 to $10 million. And at that time, you know what? We should go in as taxpayers and says, you fund the CPA now with some of this new revenue and give us a break that we've carried this town over X number of years, and we should put in an order, an article at the town meeting and take the CPA down to 0. That's what I think that we should do once the town started drawing in good revenue. So I'm telling the select board, if the good Lord leads me here, you need to start planning that you're going to fund, as long as you want this 3% of the CPA, you're going to want it, then you need to make sure you get a stabilization, and when all this new revenue started coming in, you put that money over in that stabilization fund to take care and put an article at the town meeting giving us the 2% back to us and take it down to zero and get your hand out of our pockets. That's what I see. And I think the town should do that. You've never given the taxpayers a break on 2.5. You've never given us a break. And I've looked at the rate between the taxes, it's pennies that you're giving us, saving pennies. I think the last time it was 9 cents. The mass majority of the support that operates this town, the town operation budget, is carried out of the pockets of the residential taxpayers. The commercial is just a small fraction of that operation budget. And we as taxpayers are the one that's doing that. And naturally, because we don't have that much commercial or industrial here that can help us out to that point. And that's the breaks of the game. But I think that when the town comes into the revenue that they're going to be getting, I think that there needs to start planning. This is long-range plan. If you want to keep this CPA, then you need to put your financial house in order and make sure that you're going to, because you're going to have different select people that's going to be on the boards over the next X years. But if you put that in place, then they have to fund it. Then that's the thing that ought to take place. So, you as a taxpayer and you as a voter, you come out to the town meeting in November. I am going to ask you to support the town for the 1% increase on the CPA to 2%, and don't come back in the soon and ask us for any more increase in the CPA cap. You need to now put your financial house in order and come up with the other 1% and don't come back and ask us again to increase it. Because I will be vigorously in favor of reducing anything with an amendment on the floor that is above where we stand now or hope to stand in the near future at 2%. So hear me clear, Select Board. You find the money for the 1%. I'm going to ask the taxpayers to support and the voters to give you 1 more %, which will be 2%. But do not, and I say again, that is with all caps, do not come back and ask us to give you more. I also want to bring something that's very important to your attention with regards to passing the 2% for the CPA. If you find that when you get your tax bill, and for whatever reason, you think that you're not able to pay that increase of that 1% or the 2% as a whole, you have an option. The option is to file an exemption. I checked with the chief assessor And she said that you have to fill out an application, or you can go online and get the application for the exemption. But they also have copies already printed out in the assessor's office. If you need help in filling out the application, someone in the assessor office is willing to assist you in filling out the application for the exemption. All you have to bring with you is a copy of either your state income tax from the previous year or the federal income tax from the previous year. You can use either one. If you file both, state and fed, all you need is one. And you can take that with you along with the tax bill, and someone will help you in the assessor's office to process your application for exemption. I just wanted to point that out so that you will be aware, even though if you vote for or against, you have that opportunity to file the exemption. And with having said that, I want to thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for the opportunity to bring you up to date on past concern, as well as bringing this to you today about the increase of 1% more for the CPA, which will be at 2%. God bless you, and thank you very much.